Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the September 7th Natural Resources and Environmental Commission meeting.
Thank you, Melanis. Yes, let's get started. So I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:06. And we'll start with, quickly, I'll note that we have a new commissioner tonight, Richard Tom, who's joining us for the first time. And he'll have a chance to introduce himself during communications. So let's start, Melanis, if we could, with a roll call.
We have Chair Law.
Here.
Next, Vice Chair Hammond has an excused absence. Commissioner Bortz.
Here.
We have Commissioner Hussagen, who's attending via Zoom tonight. Just one moment. We'll get back to your attendance in just a second. Commissioner Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Siegel.
Here.
And newest commissioner, Commissioner Tom.
Here.
Thank you. We have Council Liaison, Mayor Cacciati present. Thank you. Staff present, we have Ted Gerber present, and we have Matt Chang, Planning Manager, and myself, Melanie Stepanian. Thank you. And that concludes roll call.
Do we want to give Commissioner Hussagen a chance to?
I'm here. Hello, Commissioner Hussagen.
Roll call.
Okay. And can she be added formally to the meeting, or yeah, I think with Zoom, if you mute them, they can't unmute themselves, I think, right? Okay. Great, thanks. Okay, well, let's get started, and we'll move on now to the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand, everyone. Okay, and so now let's move forward with the first item on the agenda, which is public comments. Is there any public comment for tonight?
Thank you. So we had one written public comment that was submitted today during the meeting, and we will give our Zoom participants a chance to ask any questions. Please raise your hand if you have a question on Zoom. Okay, so we have no Zoom comments. We had one written public comment and no in-person comments. This concludes the general public comment section.
Thank you. And the one general public comment is in the. We'll have general. Yeah.
Like, my apologies. Yes, yes.
Just get the red light on there.
There we go. Clock started. All right. As a former commissioner, I know it's never the best thing when you see public comment. You're trying to get through a meeting agenda. But thank you, first of all, commissioners, city staff, Mayor Cacciati. You know, the work that you do is around environmental protection. And I think education is probably one of the biggest tools we can use to promote environmentalism and environmental protection. As a school district, I think South Pasadena does a great job in educating our public, but there's other resources in the city that do a great job in terms of education. And one of those resources is the public library, which is why I'm here today. So this November, Measure LL will be on the ballot. And Measure L is essentially a measure that will protect our library's budget by ensuring a small parcel tax will remain on the books for the city of South Pasadena. It provides up to and around 20% of the South Pasadena Library operating budget. So that has significant impacts if it were to be taken off those books. And so that is really the goal of why I'm here. To give you an idea of some of what the library can do for South Pasadena beyond the obvious there. A typical year, 20,000 customers visit each month. Items for reading, viewing, listening are checked out more than 25,000 times. Children's room and staff support school readiness, literacy, and a love of reading with year-round activities like storytelling and a robust summer reading program. And the library also provides free high-speed Wi-Fi and a wide array of digital resources, including streaming, films, language learning tools, homework help, and skill building classes that are all available to the public virtually 24/7. So what does this cost property owners? It costs very little, $40.23 a year for single family residences up to 2,000 square feet. And for those that are living in residences up to 4,000 square feet and above 2,000 square feet, it is $60.35 a year. So this may seem like a no-brainer, but the reality is the threshold for passing this measure is high. It is 2/3 of voters. So it means turnout is key, and it means getting the word out is key, which is why I'm here today to urge this panel, as well as any of those lovely Zoom viewers at home or anyone that is interested in this measure, to come out and support. There's a great website, southpassyesonll.com, where you can learn more, find out how you can help and support this measure. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for all the work that you do as commissioners and city staff, and of course on city council. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the comment.
Thank you for your comment. And this formally concludes the public comment section.
That is the actual conclusion. And thank you very much. So let's move on to the discussion items. And item 2 on the agenda is the review of the current parking lot codes. And we'll hear from, oh, I'm sorry. Is that right?
I'm sorry, Casey. I'm sorry.
Was
Chair.
that right? Okay.
Oh, yeah, I'll just introduce our presenter. So tonight we're talking about, well, this is supposed to be a discussion item on parking lot codes. So in the city's green action plan, which, as you all recall, is basically a supplement to the climate action plan. It's a short-term view of some goals and actions that the city can undertake while implementing the climate action plan. And among the goals in the green action plan are mitigating impacts of urban heat island effect. And so as the climate action plan is organized, the green action plan is also organized into goals, plays, and then moves. And the moves are the actual tasks underneath the plan. And the tasks that we're starting this evening is reviewing the parking lot codes and design standards, and then identifying how they can be improved. So what we're trying to accomplish tonight is our planning manager, Matt Chang, will walk us through the existing parking lot code. And then we hope to promote a discussion among the commissioners about other areas that you can direct the staff to review in terms of looking at a future improvement of the city's parking lot code towards mitigation of urban heat island impact. So with that, I'm going to pass this on to Matt Chang. Melanice is going to show the code on the screen. We don't have anything exciting visually to show you here. Just we're going to put this code up so you can follow along. And you also should have a copy of that code in your packets there. So thank you so much and welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Ted, and good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. Just a little bit, introduce myself, Matt Chang, Planning Manager here at the Community Development Department. So I started in December, like many of the staff here. We're kind of new to the city. A little background by myself. Prior to coming to South Pass, I spent the last 3 years in City of San Gabriel. Before that, 16 years with City of Thousand Oaks in Ventura County. So a little bit personal side, I went to high school here, so it's good to be back to this community, serving this great, beautiful city that once I call home. So enough said. Thank you, Melanie, for jumping to the screen. Yes, sorry. The purpose today, like Ted mentioned, that would be kind of more, could be just like a beginning of the discussion about the public works and also cities. Also this commission's goal for what you want to do. And so, sorry, Melanie, can you read? Yes, so I guess we'll start with the section 040. So this is part of our zoning code of our South Pasadena Municipal Code. And this section specifically talk about the landscaping location requirements. And in the section before that, it'll talk about what the landscaping trigger is. Before staff going to this particular section on the screen in front of you, staff just want to kind of talk about what triggers a new landscaping requirement. So for example, a brand new project, brand new buildings, whether it be single family house, multiple family, commercial, mixed use, will require a new landscaping. And the other item in the code is that if the project's doing kind of significant addition or expansion, and what that means is code defines that if they want to do 25% or more expansion in terms of square footage wise, and some of the project will require to update your existing landscaping requirements. But also there's an exception for single family houses, because usually we don't want to put burden on single family homes. But for commercial, industrial, multiple family project, if they're adding 25% or more square footage wise, you need to comply with kind of what I'm going to talk about here. So it's a little background. So, and for example, if the shopping center or supermarket, they want to do remodeling, for example, tenant improvement, reordering the shelf, the interior spaces, they're not required to follow this requirement. So because they're not expanding it, they're doing improvement, would have the new tenants or redoing the space inside the store. So they're not required to follow this requirement. So just a little kind of background. So for this one, this section identifies the locations need to be landscaped. For example, the setback requirement and the required setback needs to be landscaped, as well as unused areas under section B, which is if there's any vacant site that needs to be for future development, they need to provide landscaping. So staff won't kind of verbatim read every one of them. So I was kind of give you a brief kind of what the summary is. And under number C, parking areas, and that's what we get into kind of the meat of the discussion is we do have the code actually identifies several locations of the parking area need to be landscaped. So for example, let's go to the first one. For example, the landscaping, what need to be landscaped, and also the type of trees. For example, the minimum size of the tree needs to be 24-inch box. That's under C1, I think the almost last sentence. Tree shall be minimum 24-inch box. But of course, when, for example, for brand new construction project, brand new commercial mixed use project, when they go into whether it be planning commission or design review board, sometimes the commissioners or board members, they will ask the applicant to have a larger trees. So for example, it could be a 36-inch or 48. So kind of case by case, but the minimum is 24-inch. So the commissioner, when they approve the entitlement project, sometimes they require bigger trees as a condition of approval. So, but at least the minimum need 24-inch box. The second item would be the curbing. So the idea is basically to have a concrete curb around the landscaping to protect the landscaping area. So you need to, I think, provide safeguard for the vehicle as well. The third item is the location of a landscaping. And I think just for this section is more the design of the landscaping should be thoughtful. So typically when I think this could be this city or other city, when you go to shopping center, you instantly want to cross the landscaping, get the straight line, get to the storefront. So the idea is to have a well thought of a design that you can go around, have a pedestrian pass, you can walk your parking area to the store instead of stepping on the landscaping planting area. So number 4 is the bumper over the landscaping area to provide safeguard for the tree, for the landscaping planters as well for the vehicle as well. And Melanie's can move a little bit, showing more the number 5. So for this one, number 5, and also number 5A and B, and the code start talking about the location of the landscaping needs to be required. For example, if it's adjacent to street, adjacent to the property line, and those specific requirements. For example, if it's adjacent to street, they need to have would it be a minimum 10 feet or setback requirement, most likely in some of the commercial zonings, the setback requirement for commercial building actually 0 setback. That's why I think the code section says in A1 says setback required by the zoning district or 10 feet, whichever is more. So in case of a building requires 0 setback, in this case, will require 10 feet because 10 feet is more. So in that case, we'll require 10 feet. And the next item is the screening material. We'll talk about the height of the material and also type of combination of a wall and also material adjacent to, would it be adjacent to public street or adjacent to the property line? So it's typically that when you go to shopping plazas, whether it be here or different cities, you can see, typically you got the street, the sidewalk, then you see landscaping planters, then you will see the parking spaces. And the third item is shaded trees, and the requirement calls for minimum 1 tree for every 30 linear feet of landscape areas. But this one also talk about may include area of a cluster of trees. Staff will get into a little bit after this. And number B is adjacent to side or rear property lines. So for landscaping for brand new projects or for remodeling projects, if it's feasible, because sometimes those two have those buildings are literally right next to the property lines. And if it's a brand new construction, brand new building, that if it's that will require a landscaping between, more like a buffer. So the purpose, you have a buffer between the building itself. For example, a commercial use next to a multiple family use, you have a little buffer, landscaping buffer, would it be a 10 feet or other numbers that you have a buffer between the two different uses. In this case, they require a buffer zone for the landscaping, but also require a number of trees. For example, the tree shall be provided at a rate of 1 for each 30 linear feet of landscaping areas. So number C and D, like staff mentioned before, I think staff mentioned a little bit earlier about the different uses. For example, D, if a commercial use is adjacent to residential use, and there's some criteria about a minimum 10 feet width between the parking area and the property line. So you have that buffer between the commercial use and the next door single family or multiple family uses. And also at the end, also talk about the tree requirement. It looks like it's all universal, with 1 required tree shall be planted for each 30 linear feet of landscaping area. Okay, and for number 6 is talk about more the interior within most likely a commercial plaza. So for the interior parking lot, here are the requirements. For example, number A, minimum area of landscaping. The code mentioned that a minimum 10% of the total parking lot shall be landscaped with trees, shrubs, and ground covers. And B, talk about shading requirements. And shading requirements, 1 tree for every 4 parking spaces. But also like staff mentioned a little bit earlier, that talk about the cluster. They also talk about the required tree, even though require 1 tree for every 4 spaces, but the tree may be clustered during the design review process. So when the entitlement process going before planning commission or design review board, they can look at the conceptual landscaping plan to find out what's the best location to plant those trees. So at the entitlement stages, the planning commission as well as the design review board, they will look at from the land use perspective, the building architectural, but also they review the conceptual landscaping plans. And this will be one of the items they'll be looking at it, the location of the trees, the type of the trees, and also of course the size of the tree. Would it be a 24-inch box or it should be something larger? Okay. Sorry, we're running into a little technical difficulty. And back to subsection C, planter dimensions. And this one will kind of give you an example that what the code's intention, also the requirements are. So for example, they would like to see like island at the end of the parking spaces or in the middle, but definitely not the diamond shape, which you can see the screen in front of you or in the municipal code itself. And also they have a minimum requirement of 5 feet by 5 feet. And the last is the larger project. Talk about the parking lot with more than 150 parking spaces shall provide a concentration of landscaping elements at the primary entrance, including specimen trees, plants, enhanced paving, and project identifications. Usually they're like, for example, the signage. So this is more, I guess, a quick rundown of our existing municipal code on landscaping. Landscaping next to a property line or landscaping within the parking lot of commercial projects. So I know there's a lot of kind of items. So staff just want to do a quick rundown of what the code is. But staff is definitely want to kind of get the comments from the commissioners about our existing codes. Like staff mentioned before, it's just more a beginning of the conversation discussions, and staff would like to get any comments from the commissioners. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's give commissioners a chance to go down the line here and ask questions. Would you like to start?
Sure, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to be on Planning Commission. Thank you to Mayor Cacciati, and look forward to working with all of you, but I'll do a little more of that later. I guess this being the beginning of this process, and again, I haven't been involved in this prior to this, I'm assuming that the idea would be, for example, I know Governor Newsom just passed whatever it is, AB 2097 last week, that basically eliminates parking ability to have requirements for parking within whatever it is, a quarter mile of transit locations. I guess I'm assuming that's something that needs obviously to be factored into what the new plan will be. And let me back up a step and say, I know this was done. I looked in 2009, and it made sense in 2009. And I think I was on the planning commission still in 2009. And it struck me then that there was no way you're going to change any parking requirements because, parking is, next to the one of the few things you can't ever change in any urban area because everybody says there's not enough parking. It seems like right now we're at a place where with bills like 2097, we've got to change in thinking, the housing affordability requirements and everything else. So I guess it seems like if now is not the time, I don't know when there ever will be a time to really rethink how we do parking and what the requirements are. So I think the landscaping pieces are an important piece of it. But I think that even more fundamentally, I think it's a matter of rethinking what we've had forever, whatever the requirements are, the 2 covered spaces and residential, and then for commercial, you're talking about this many spaces for retail and so forth. I think that really needs to fundamentally be looked at. I know that's not necessarily the full purview of this commission, but nonetheless, if you don't do those things, then the landscaping may look nice, but it's not going to really make a fundamental difference in terms of the heat islands and changing the way that we do parking, because I have to hope and believe that we're going to change that over the next 50 years, because if we don't, we're not going to, it's going to be the same. And that's not the point. So I would think that a new look at this would have to look at what the requirements would be with this new bill, and anticipating what other bills may come out in the next several years relative to parking and minimizing the amount of parking that's going to be needed. I think more specific to South Pass, I guess I think that you'd want, if you haven't done it already, a survey of the existing lots, looking at what, given what I know is still a housing element that's still in the process, but between the housing element and the general plan, what the anticipated areas for parking, larger parking lots will be, let alone, even the residential parking and how that's going to potentially change. Especially with, for example, what if you change the parking requirement in residential, how will that change the ability of people to do ADUs in their homes? So that I know is not covered by this particular part of the zoning ordinance, but I think that's something that the city should look at, because if we're going to densify the city the way that the housing element calls for, I just don't see how you don't relook at parking requirements and really make the change. More specific to this, I guess I'm thinking parking lots, traditionally asphalt. I think you have to look at, what other cities are doing, but things like permeability, having different kinds of parking lots. You don't have to have asphalt, because then you can actually have water infiltration, all those kinds of issues that you want to be thinking about. Again, I'm not the expert on this. I think it seems to me we should be looking around at what other cities around the state and around the country are doing relative to those issues, because I think, the best thing to do is to learn from what others have done. With that, I'll just turn and remind everybody, this is the statistic I just looked up. We have 8 parking spaces for every car in the country. And it takes up 5% of the land, of the land use. And that's just crazy relative to what we're doing, what we're trying to do. So those are my comments for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Tom. Let's go down the line, and Commissioner Jones.
Okay, I apologize in advance. This is a subject that's near and dear to me, so I have a lot to say. I did, in my prior life, I lived in Portland and worked in a transportation engineering firm. So we did a lot of parking lots, and we did a lot of stormwater projects as well. So I have looked at the code in depth before. It's been a while, but I made some comments back when I did. So I first wanted to just mention that, like, the unshaded asphalt park can reach up to 160 degrees, and that temperature can be drastically reduced by planting trees. It can reduce it up to 36 degrees, and vehicle interior by 47 degrees if you're in a shaded parking lot. So you can see the numbers are pretty drastic. The trees also help reduce the hydrocarbon emissions from parked cars. Obviously, as we move towards electric, this will decrease, but it's worth noting now. And they also, asphalt increases the air pollution, there's an increase in air pollutants due to abandonment of mass transit, the more parking we provide. It's just, so some of the cities I reviewed the code of that I think would be applicable to South Pass would be Palm Desert. Even the city of Los Angeles has more stringent planting requirements. Portland it's a totally different climate, but they have very good sort of creative ideas with infiltration and how to deal with stormwater. The things I noticed the most about our code was that this isn't actually the code shortcomings, it's what I noticed in the city was that the 1-to-4 ratio of trees to parking spaces isn't met anywhere. And the other thing is we should really reconsider the curbing requirement because that makes infiltration really challenging. So if we think about doing wheel stops and reducing the grade or bringing down the grade of the planter, then we can take care of stormwater within the parking lot itself. There is a few spots in the code where I feel like there's a lot of wiggle room that can be interpreted in many ways. For example, on the last section regarding the entry landscaping, I just feel like if there was some greater detail in there, it would really help guide developers and the design review board and what requirements need to be met. So like I said, the curb requirement is a big thing. The other thing was clustering trees. You don't have much shade distribution if you're clustering trees. I think that it's mentioned twice in the code, and I don't think it should be in there. And the 1-to-4 ratio of trees to parking spots, you could add in a secondary mandate, which is 50% coverage in 10 years. A lot of jurisdictions do that where they say this ratio and 50% coverage, and that incentivizes them planting large canopied trees. I also think it would be great. I know our urban forester did a tree list for street trees and sort of heat tolerant trees. I think it would be great if we had a master tree list for parking lots. Because right now there's nothing in the code that really states the size of canopy and the type of tree. There's a lot of, I see conifers in parking lots and palm trees in parking lots, which don't really provide a lot of shade depending on the species. And then, sorry, I only have a few more comments and then I'll be done. As Tom mentioned, I think adding either permeable paving incentives or using something that's highly reflective like cool seal instead of traditional asphalt would be fantastic. And maybe there's a system of giving developers shade and stormwater infiltration credits that would have to be worked into other parts of the code. And then there's a comment here I made many years ago, so let me just read it. Many jurisdictions have a sliding scale for shade percentage to tree ratio, depending on the parking lot size. So the city may want to consider this due to the number of smaller lots with more than 10 spaces or 3,000 square feet of parking triggers code in other jurisdictions. So we don't really have like a minimum square feet percentage, I don't think. And then my only other big comment would be, is there a way we can incorporate in the development code something surrounding renovation of these big, commercial complexes or grocery stores where it like a certain percentage of improvement equals, you have to adhere to the parking lot code. And then I know in Portland they did small business grants for planting trees in parking lots. So that's just something that we might consider if we have that in our Metropolitan Water District credit thoughts. Okay, that's it.
I would like to back some of the things that Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Tom mentioned about adding definitely with regard to the landscaping, maybe they could reference our heat and water drought tolerant tree list, because I think that's very important. And so that, what's being planted will thrive. And I'm not sure what ground cover really does for maybe some aesthetics, but it seems like that's what's that?
I think it is more aesthetic.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
And then also the water infiltration, I think would be very easy and pretty important to any improvements we might have to the code. But definitely if they could refer to our list, I think that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Going to sound like a broken record, but I would love to echo the sentiments of my fellow commissioners. Absolutely, I would love to see more stringent requirements. Absolutely, we want to bring down stormwater runoff. We have a lot of parking lots, and that's a lot of pollution running off of them. So what we can do with permeability, various other, rain gardens, whatever we can do at the parking lots to bring that down would be great. But I think the most important thing, which Commissioner Tom mentioned, is just the size of our parking lots. Number one thing we can do environmentally has nothing to do with landscaping on these parking lots. Is just having less parking lots. You mentioned 5%. If you actually add on-street parking, it goes up to 14%. There are 200 square miles in all of LA County dedicated to parking. It's a lot. In the South Pass, we have a lot. And a lot of it's empty. We don't need it. And so I'd love to see the minimum requirements go away. Just because you remove minimum requirements doesn't mean that they're not going to build parking. The developer understands what their clientele needs, and they're going to build the right size for it. We shouldn't need to tell them that they need to build a bunch of parking. So the more we can bring down the amount of parking would be great. And then you also mentioned that single family homes are exempt from the landscaping requirement, but per capita single family home usage of water is greater than residential or commercial. And so why can't we ask them if they're going to be rebuilding to have some of these landscaping requirements as well? We should, try to, if we can ask for them to have a certain percentage of non-grass, drought tolerant, non-water intrusive landscaping, I think that would be great. Yeah, what they said. Thanks. Okay. So let's see. Yeah, so I do. One thing that kind of stands out to me is, this point about densification. I like, and so just looking at the context of this specific ordinance, of course, and we're talking about landscaping and parking lots there. So I think maybe the most relevant parameter is setbacks, right? I mean, setbacks are what define a minimum density. And so there's a setback of 10 feet required from public street right away to the parking area. And there's another 10, this looks like there's another 10 feet defined adjacent to residential use. I guess that's a similar concept, right? You have these buffers that are everywhere. Are there other buffers or setbacks that I'm missing here? Are those the two big ones?
I think adjacent to street, if you already mentioned, I'm not sure.
Street and residential buffers, I guess, are kind of the critical ones, right? And then, right. So I guess it would be interesting to, think about if that does make it difficult to meet, for example, housing goals, and if we can't reach the density we want as a city, as we've committed to, is that a parameter that we could, change to help us reach that goal? So that's one broad comment. And then maybe specifically in the context of AB 2097, there is this special zone in the city now, right, where there will in the future be no minimum parking requirements. is there something that we can do in the context of this plan that would support the intention of that new state law? So rather than just, having the state, state law sort of preempt our, choices here, we should just actually just, agree with the sentiment of the law and then actually design around that intention, which is to densify around transit, right? So would that mean maybe that, the setbacks are not in place in these zones? And that's, maybe that's one idea. I haven't thought that through, but if density is the goal near transit, that's one obvious thing you could think about as a special zone that's appropriate for that region. Right. And then actually maybe supporting that, we talked about urban heat island effect. And I think one of the context for a lot of this is that the only, maybe the principal way that you mitigate is to plant trees in parking lots, since it takes up so much space, you have trees there. But, you can also imagine that there are green spaces on roofs, and we've talked about that in this commission before. So, if you were to take away buffer spaces and all this sort of, green spaces that are nominally for mitigating urban heat island effect, we actually could still meet our, kind of need to mitigate urban heat island effect from green roofs and other places, right? So it doesn't have to be like parking lots are not our only way to do this. That's what I'm saying. And so I would say, yeah, that's just a way to support the first point, I think. I'm really curious about this idea Commissioner Jones just floated about shade or infiltration credits. I had never thought about it before, but I've heard of credits in the context of housing, density and so on. But I wonder if that's something that we could explore a little more.
Well, especially with these existing parking lots, if the code no longer requires them to have as many spaces as they have, if they're changing over spaces to trees, infiltration, maybe there's a way that we can incentivize that.
So the credits in that case are in the principal like structure, development of the structure, or like height, or what is the? It's
don't know.
crossing over some boundary.
Yeah,
though,
it
definitely, right?
is,
Yeah.
definitely. Ted has a thought on that.
Yeah, there are some sort of conceptual stormwater credit programs that are sort of gaining interest in terms of like, one facility would have an MS4 requirement that they have to meet. And then if another facility can actually meet and exceed their MS4 requirement, they can generate those credits and provide it to the other facility, almost like energy credit programs. Haven't really seen them take off, but that's one concept, is that, a facility can increase its infiltration and actually treatment and then provide it to another facility. So it's the same kind of downsides as other credit programs has, where you're essentially allowing one to sort of buy their way out of the compliance loop, but it does have an advantage to it that you actually do increase the amount of infiltration. So those do exist. I don't think they've come to really fruition in the market, but it's something that we've seen.
I'll have to look into the city of Portland credits, because I think that's what I was referring to, but it was so long ago, I completely forgot what the program was hinged around.
Right. Okay. It's interesting. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Commissioner Husagan. I
okay.
preempted you. Please go. Please take your time.
No problem. My only question / comment was, can it be more explicit? And I think this sort of builds on what the other commissioners have said, but if the code could specifically say no turf, that would be great.
Okay, and let's see here. I don't know if it's within the right place for this, but we've talked a lot about maintenance and the failure of trees in large parking lots in the city. Is that something that falls under this ordinance, or this is really about zoning and planning approvals, right? So it doesn't cover. There's no mechanism to enforce maintenance of trees here, is there?
No, that'd be covered in chapter 34, the tree ordinance, I believe, not here in the zoning ordinance.
Right, okay, yeah, so no need to reference it then. But I think that covers all of my questions, so.
Ed.
We can, we can do another pass through just to like make sure you'll have a second chance.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you. The other part of it, that I think some of the other commissioners mentioned was, this is primarily a built out city. And so the challenge you have, for some of the bigger parking lots in the city are that they're already built and they're going to be there for who knows how long. And I guess that's equally true for the residences, which aren't covered by this. And I'm not necessarily trying to change the scope of what you've been tasked to do, except that it seems to me if we're not going to address the whole issue of parking in the city, if maybe we have to do it in pieces, but it strikes me that the idea of incentives and a reevaluation and trying to get the existing uses as parking altered or cut back or whatever you want to say, it just changed so that there's less of it, or that some of these other measures we're talking about start to get implemented. So whether it's credits or whether it's some sort of system of, recognizing that whether it's the parking lot at a grocery store that's in place, are there incentives that we can provide to give them the opportunity to say, well, maybe we don't have to have a 200 space lot anymore. We can have a 150 spot space, a 150 spot lot. And in doing that, we're able to get a benefit out of it. I think we have to start looking at those things, because otherwise we run into this problem and of it's the way it is, and it will always be that way because they're not going to change. It's not going to change. There's a useful life to these parking lots, and why would they be doing it? I think for the residents, it's the same thing, where again, whether it's ADUs or other use of that property, presumably it's going to be a lot of ADUs over the next 20 to 30 years. If you have the same parking requirement in place for the residences, which I again know is not covered by this, but it seems to me it has to be dealt with by the city if you're going to really address the problem. You've got to change that requirement and give people an incentive to say, okay, now I don't have to do that. I know that with the ADU as of right, some of those things are in place already, but the city should look at other incentives to encourage even more of that if it's really going to work. Again, it's with an eye towards a day when we don't necessarily all have to have our own cars and all that. And I know it's not there yet, and I know there's going to be that transition period and people will get upset because I know in planning commission we often talked about the idea of, well, people are going to get upset if there's not enough parking, but you also get to this place of, well, you'll never transition if you're always in a mode of saying we have to provide parking spaces for everybody. So I think we're at that place where it has to be looked at comprehensively if it's going to really change. Absent that, the city will still look nice, but it won't have changed in terms of what we're doing on this better use of the space we've got.
If staff can just kind of provide a little bit of background, or actually update. So like Commissioner Tom was talking about the parking requirement. Actually, besides the housing element, I think everyone knows where the community development or cities going to the housing element update, but also I think most of you heard for the past 4 or 5 years. I know I just started in December, but for the past 4 or 5 years, city actually is going to updating our general plan, also our downtown specific plan. So right now we have a Mission Street specific plan, which covered the Mission Street, but the new downtown specific plan is going to cover the Mission Street from Brent Avenue to Indiana, but also will cover a portion of the Fair Oaks from the freeway down to Bank Street, if I try to remember correctly. So which that encompasses the area. We're not just going to look at, for example, the density, the housing, to addressing the housing element requirement, but also we're looking at the parking requirement too. We're definitely explore reduce or lowering the parking requirement, because we definitely heard from the commissioners, from the residents, from the business owners talk about, do we need that parking space? So I think I think we're looking at to release the draft maybe sometime later this year that maybe commission can weigh in on it. We're definitely looking to reduce the parking requirements. So actually that would be helpful that to the existing tenants, supermarkets, like Commissioner Siegel was talking about. Just because you require 0 doesn't mean they won't provide it, because they will provide it for the customer, for the residents. They know the numbers. So I think when the downtown specific plan released for public review draft, encourage the commissioner to look at it, weigh in on it for a variety of reasons, for landscaping, for parking requirement. So just want to give you an update on that. We're definitely looking into reducing parking requirements, kind of a comprehensive, but also we'll have to consider make sure there's adequate parking as well. So
yeah, and I mean I understand what Commissioner Siegel is saying. I guess the The only thing I would say is that to some extent, if we just go with what people are asking for, we're going to again get the same thing again. And I guess it seems to me that if we're ever at a place where we as a city can say, we're going to maybe push those limits and say, I know you're going to want this. And again, there will have to be some transition of some sort if we're going to change from such a car-centric culture to something different. But I just don't, I mean, if you just do it based on, the market will say, I want the 2 spaces, right? I mean, that's just the way it's, so I understand the balance, and I'm not saying it's simple. I'm just saying that I think we should really, as a city, explore pushing that limit, because if we don't, we're going to get more of the same.
Chair Law, if I may, real quick. So if I understand correctly, then instead of removing minimum parking requirements, it might be better to instate maximum parking requirements. So is
That might
that
be-
something we could look at? Maximum parking requirements?
And Commissioner Jones, would you like, we're going to go back through again. Any comments beyond what you first commented on?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, and I have no further comments. And Commissioner Husagen?
No other comments, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And so, so with that, I think we can bring this item to a close discussion. So thank you, everyone, for your comments, and thanks staff for the presentation.
Thank you guys very much for
Thank
bringing
you.
this.
Okay, so now we'll move on to the one and only action item of the evening, which is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. And so the meeting minutes are in your packet, so I'll give people a moment just to review that and consider comments or corrections. Okay, and I would welcome a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the August 23rd meeting for the NRAC.
And I'll second.
And a roll call, please, Melanie.
Perfect. So Commissioner Tom,
I abstain.
Chair Law,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Bortz,
Yes.
Commissioner Siegel,
Yes.
and lastly, Commissioner Husagen.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion passes to approve the minutes from the August 23rd NRAC meeting. Now I open the Chair Law.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, well, let's move on to City Council Liaison Communications. Our mayor is here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And keeping with the theme of transition, as we transition from our gas-powered leaf blowers for our local gardeners, we're getting close to actually implementing October 1st, when we implement our ordinance becomes effective. I want to thank this commission for supporting it. I've been at the last CAR meeting for the core program, Clean Off-Road Equipment. So it looks like that program should be the incentive program of $30 million, $3 million for administration, 27 million for the gardeners, should be effective around November 7th. They said that's not a drop dead date, but that's where they're at now. They were at the summer, early fall, now they're at November 7th. Once that becomes effective, we should know next month. That means all the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers are involved, the dealers like Ace Hardware there, then they can make it open to their mom and pop gardeners. So we'll probably, our ordinance, even though it's effective, we won't really start enforcing. I'm going to recommend probably till right after the holidays so the gardeners can buy stuff for their families and the equipment can actually be available for people to buy. There's still supply chain issues. Talking to Dan, there may be only one company now that's kind of controlling the market in China. So we're going to try to get this so the other parts of the world can also participate. So looking forward to that coming online very soon. Secondly, I want Ted will talk about this a lot, but I really want to thank staff. Casey did a great job testifying the other night. I've got a list here of all the things we've done for 20 years getting up to this project to electrify our city hall and to convert our police to electric vehicles. It passed 4-1. The only objection really was Councilmember Mahmood wanted to extend it out maybe 2 or 3 years, the conversion from a gas-powered fleet to an electric fleet. The rest of the council wanted to go ahead all at once. So we're going to start all at once. We're at a meeting today to really coordinate the multiple parts that are moving on parallel tracks. And Ted will go through the details, but again, we've got CPA, we've got solar, we've got battery storage, we've got police vehicles, electrification, a lot of things going on. So we're kind of coordinating all this all together so everything comes together. Hopefully the middle or later next year, actually see police vehicles, electrification moving around South Pasadena. So again, I want to thank this commission for really getting that out front, and the police in the public safety and the Public Works Commission. And our staff did an incredible job. This was a really great team effort. You're going to see something that really is going to be a model to be replicated by all law enforcement agencies in the world. So just great stuff going on in the city. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we'll move on to Commissioner Communications, and we'll give maybe our newest Commissioner, Commissioner Tom, a chance to introduce himself.
Sure. Thank you very much. And thank you for the warm welcome tonight. And again, thank you to Mayor Cacciati for appointing me to this. Just by way of background, I mentioned this a couple of people before. I've served on the Planning Commission for, I think it's like 4 terms. I think it was 2000 and, well, let's see, I started in Cultural Heritage Commission, I think 1999 or 2000, served on that till 2004, I think it was. And then I served on the Planning Commission from 2004 to 2012. And then I've served on the Planning Commission again from 2015 to 2020. So it's however many terms that is. So I've been involved with the city almost as long, I think, as the mayor here has been in the council. Almost, not quite as long as Michael has. And just have a real interest in seeing the city move in the right direction and do these things. Michael mentioned, the mayor mentioned the Clean Power Alliance, CPA. I'm actually also on the Community Advisory Council for the Clean Power Alliance and have been since they started in 2019. So been involved with this activity and would like to stay involved. So that's basically it. I've been a little bit of everywhere. You and I were at the Department of Justice together, at the State Department of Justice. We were at the AG's office together. I also worked at Edison, Southern California Edison, for about 17 years. I also now I'm working for the LA City Attorney's Office. I was doing work for the Department of Water and Power. Now I'm over in another group in the City Attorney's Office working with the LA Homeless Services Authority and other commissions and departments within the city. So had a little bit of everything in the way of experience. So look forward to learning from all of you.
Great, thank you and welcome.
Sure, thank you.
Commissioner Jones.
I don't really have any comments other than to welcome Commissioner Tom, and I'm excited to be working with somebody that has so many years of experience, especially in planning, because I think it would be great to further bridge that gap that we sometimes have in the process. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
No comments for me, and welcome, Commissioner Tom.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Just 2 things. First, last Commissioner communication, we asked the staff if they could include more multimodal transportation in the upcoming open house. You guys listened. Thank you. I know Active SGV is coming with RB out. You guys already have your hands full. And so I know, you guys are resource tied right now. And so I appreciate you guys still reaching out to them and getting them included. So that's going to be great for the open house. Secondly, we have a bike to school, walk to school day, October 5th. I'm sure, Ted, you're going to talk about it coming up in your communication. A few of the parents at the elementary schools are going to be doing a bike bus to the schools on a few routes. I will be leading one of the routes to Marengo. Mayor Cacciati was nice enough to agree to join us, so he will be there. If you guys want to join, you said you said you wanted to get out biking more. Come join us. But it's going to be October 5th. We are still finalizing routes based on those who are signing up. It looks like we're going to have at least 2 to Marengo, 1 from Garfield Park, 1 from south of Huntington. And it looks like we're going to have a couple more from to AV as well. So it should be exciting to not just have a bike to school day, but actually get kids biking to school. So thank you very much.
Okay, and Commissioner Husagan?
Hi, yeah, welcome to the commission. And my only comment is just to ask, I know Arpie's on maternity leave and she had been planning a visit for us to the Athens facility. I'm wondering if it's possible still to do that. And also hoping that we'll get an update about her new baby. Thanks.
Hi, Commissioner Husagan and commission members. The MRF tour is still going to happen. We're just figuring out the transportation. And due to the Brown Act, we'd have to limit how many people can go together. So we have 2 tours organized, and we're hoping to open up the invitation to other commissions as well if they would like to join. So we'll have an update for you hopefully by the next commission meeting. Thank you for your patience.
Great,
Thanks.
thank you. And for my comments, I would just echo what Mayor said. It was really wonderful to see the action taken last week on the electrification efforts. And I have to say, I've never really been involved in seeing a bunch of policy nerds pour out of City Hall excited and clapping each other on the back. So it was a really fun thing. And I was really happy I was there. And I thank you everyone for your contributions to that. It's really going to change our city in a few years' time, I would say. That said, I did find a funny statistic recently, which kind of was a little sobering, which is that electrification is an incredible necessity in our lives going forward, but roughly 50% of the greenhouse gas emissions associated with driving actually is associated with the manufacturing of vehicles, and so even electric vehicles, you can only reduce the greenhouse gas impact by half. Basically, that's the limit, and so it's good to remember that. Alternatives to automobiles are really critical to helping us meet our goals. And so topics like densification and mass transit and the bicycle and safe pedestrian environment is all urgently a part of what NREC should do, and as a matter of meeting our goals in the climate action plan. So I hope we can keep up the great transition that we're all working towards. And then my final comment, I've been mentioning this for a few meetings, but as chair, I have one goal, which is to get 100% active mode from our commissioners to come into meetings. That's a surprise to Commissioner Tom. I'm sorry if that's a surprise to you, but but I just wanted to quickly check in. Did we get 100% today? I'm not sure. Walking or transit or biking? Did we make it? Okay, I didn't, you were not notified. You were not notified. So that's totally understandable. And Commissioner Husagan has done the most of all by staying home. Okay, so we're not quite there yet, but I'd love to have that happen in my time as chair. So we'll keep trying. So I'll finish my comments with that, but thank you very much. So now we can move on to staff liaison communications.
Thank you, commissioners. So yeah, a few things to touch base on. As Melanie's had mentioned, we are still trying to set up the Athens visit. So we're just trying to work out the transportation details on that. And as Commissioner Siegel had mentioned, there is we're holding our Bike to School Day on October 5th. So Community Services is heading up that event with participation with police and fire. So they'll actually be at all the elementary schools and the middle school, giving away items to those that bike or walk to school. So it's very exciting. And thank you so much for promoting that event. There's some more information about it on our website under the events page. If you go to South Pasadena, ca.gov/events for October 5th. That'll occur next week, and that is after our October 2nd open house event, which is from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So we'll be closing off Mission Street, and we'll have, some inflatables, and all of the city departments will be out there with some giveaways. There'll be a tour of first floor of City Hall. There'll be police vehicles, fire vehicles, public works vehicles out there. So please bring the family, and there's lots to see and to do. And we'll also be raffling off some electric lawn equipment donated by a combination between LA Galaxy, Echo Manufacturing, and American Green Zone Alliance. That's very exciting. So we'll be having that drawing, I think 1:30 p.m. on Sunday. So please come over to the Public Works booth or the AGSA booth and sign up and get your name in consideration for some electric lawn equipment. To address some of the comments tonight, first off, thank you so much for your comments on the parking lot item. Our main goal here was to actually get your feedback as members of the community. So really helpful to enrich us with all your comments. That's the type of information we were looking to gather tonight. So thank you for being so in depth in those in your adding that information for us. Arpi is on leave. She'll be out for a few months. So thank you for bearing with us as we try to juggle to absorb all the work in her absence. Melanie's, thank you so much for helping us out tonight. Melanie's will be helping with some of Arpi's tasks. But we're also going to be utilizing some of our on-call consultants to carry forward some of the programs in her absence, and then she can hopefully just pick right back up when she's here next year. No update on her family just yet. I think she's doing just fine, but we haven't received any information on the new one coming along just yet. But hopefully we'll keep you posted if she gives us that information. So beyond that, the last item I'll touch on is, as the mayor had mentioned, the council did approve plans to move forward with several electrification projects last week. So one is leasing a full lease electric fleet. So that we'll be starting that leasing, we'll be entering into those leasing agreements soon enough and put the vehicles on order. So once the vehicles are delivered, they have to go through upfitting for police specific type of equipment. So we're hoping between 8 and 15 months, we have that fleet in place. And then in that time, we'll also be making some significant upgrades to the electrical infrastructure at City Hall. We're planning an array of level 2 chargers through the Southern California Edison Charge Ready program. And then we're also looking at the feasibility of adding another level 3 charger to support the police fleet. That'll be in addition to the level 3 charger that we added this year in the fire department lot. So also very exciting about this is that the level 2 array that would be going in as part of the Edison Charge Ready program, 14 of those charging ports would be available to the public. So part of our analysis, in addition to determining how we'll operate the vehicles in terms of electric charging planning so that we can save the city some money in terms of how we charge the vehicles. We'll also be looking into how to best set up those public facing chargers and get the price just right to have some sort of cost recovery in terms of the build out for those chargers, but also offer some reasonable rates for people to come and charge their vehicles over at City Hall. So another project that was approved last week was the Clean Power Alliance Power Ready solar and battery backup system. So this is a planned solar array in the Mound and Hope parking lot across the street with a battery backup system for critical loads during a power emergency located at City Hall. And so the next step for this program is for the city to be bundled with other cities' sites for a developer to bid on. So we'll be part of a request for offers that Clean Power Alliance has said that will be going out in October. So that's a long-term plan. The infrastructure we built over the next couple of years, but the first steps being taken in October. And so that's all I have for tonight. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and we're entering the home stretch here. Oh, Melanie, did you have any comments or?
I just wanted to encourage all residents and commercial establishments to apply for our rebates. The values just recently went up, so if you were interested in applying, you can change your landscape to drought tolerant, purchase native trees, do drip irrigation, and we also have Metropolitan Water District rebates that we match, so you get double the rebate. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, in some cases, the city is larger than Metro's, so it's even more than double. Yeah, that was one we were active in. So let's see, I'll just highlight upcoming events here. So yeah, as noted, there's a City Hall open house on October 2nd. Free compost giveaway on October 15th from 10 to 2 p.m. And there's a URL there listed in the agenda packet. Waterfest 2022 is on October 29th from 9 to 12 p.m. And that's which I didn't hear much about that. I don't know much about it. Is that Melanie? Do you know much about what that is?
Perfect. Hi, can you hear me? Okay, so this will be an event that's occurring in Arcadia. Yes, the The flyer is in your packet if you'd like to review it. I'll actually be tabling there. We're going to have a game for anyone who passes by. There will be several booths all around encouraging water-wise usage while we're in the drought and just natural everyday usage that we should be considering. So if you'd like to attend, it's a free event that's occurring. And the information is on that flyer and has been posted on our environmental programs page as well as the city calendar.
Okay, great, thank you. And so there's also URLs here for the LA County Smart Gardening webinars and the Metro Water District turf removal and California Native Wildlife landscape webinars, which are occurring on an ongoing basis. So with that, I will call this meeting to a close at 8:16 p.m.